All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, do the roll call. Okay, Commissioner Bolin. Here. Commissioner Metcalf.
Present.
Commissioner Peterson.
Here.
Vice Chair Ray Halby.
Present.
Okay. Yes. Commissioner Duran.
Here.
And Commissioner Bacon.
Here.
And Chair Nitsa Verdugo London. Not here. Mr. Vice Chair, we have a quorum.
Very good. All right. I move to approve minutes from June 6, 2018.
I move that we approve the minutes as printed and distributed.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes approved. Okay, do we have any old business?
Mr. Vice Chair, we do not at this time.
Very good. All right, we'll move to new business. First item on the list, Cool PZ 1807-20 CUP, a conditional use permit submitted by, help me with the name?
It's Opus Zapatio, I think it is the way it's pronounced. He's in the audience, I think. Yeah.
Are they back there?
Yes. Did I pronounce that right, or kind of close? Okay, good.
For a church located at 120 North Arizona Boulevard, Suite 9, Coolidge, Arizona, APN 204-080510.
Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioners, this is a request for conditional use permit. As you know, under most of our zoning, different classifications to put a church in requires a conditional use permit, really to check for parking, to make sure it's appropriate for the area. And in this case, where this church is going, it was already a church existing that's leaving. So this is really replacing a church that was already there. So this is an appropriate use for the place, and they have an agreement with the owner of the property, and I believe we've looked at everything. They have the proper parking, and let's see what else. And they'll be utilizing the parking just to the south of them, so that'll be dedicated to this to the church use, I believe. They don't need it. Site plan. On this one, we don't have to have it. Right?
They'll be, for their parking, there's 9 spaces on the south side of the building and 7 on the north.
There's enough.
They need 4 per code. One of the restrictions we've put in the conditional use permit is that church meetings and services can only be held on Sunday or after 6 p.m. during the week. There's several other tenants in the building that utilize that parking, so within normal business hours during the week, they couldn't meet the parking requirement. But those businesses are gone after 5:30. They don't operate on Sundays, so there's no conflict with parking.
And we could ask the applicant if he's okay with that. Yeah, he'd agreed to that. Okay. So we have staff recommends approval on the conditional use permit.
Any
So,
comments?
yeah. Do you want to open up the public hearing and see if anybody?
Public hearing first. Okay. We'd like to open it up to the public to speak. If you'd like to address the commission, please come to the podium, state your name, your address, where you live. No? Okay. Close the public hearing.
Mr. Vice Chair, I move that we approve Is my mic on? Yeah, there it is.
Yes.
I move that we approve Cool PZ 1807-20 conditional use permit.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Okay. Second item in order. Cool PZ 1807-21. A conditional use permit submitted by Jeff Rooney for an additional accessory garage exceeding 100 or 800 square feet located at 684 West Central Avenue, Coolidge, APN 204-08-1300.
Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioners, Tim Hansen will be covering this item. He's very familiar with the requirements of the zoning code.
Thank you, Director Lopez. Chairman Halby, the applicant Jeff Rooney, he's been in the office several times. We've spoke at length to try and help him accomplish his goals here. The property is on the corner of 7th and Central. There's an existing garage in the back of the property. He wants to do an addition on it. It's 864 square feet. Code requires anything exceeding 800 square feet or the height of the principal structure to run the conditional use process. We've advertised it. We've notified everyone within 300 feet. This meets code setbacks. He is concreting the driveway between his property line and the garage doors, and we recommend approval with the conditions that if it exceeds 870 square feet, he needs a new conditional use permit, and all his parking and drive areas must be adequately surfaced per code, meaning concrete or asphalt. And I'll answer any questions you have.
Have any questions? Just make a motion to open it to the public.
Yeah, just go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion.
No, you don't need a motion, just,
Okay, just open it up.
We'll open this up to public discussion. Okay, we'll close the public discussion. If there's no further discussion, we'll entertain a motion.
Vice Chair, I move that we approve Cool PZ 1807-21 conditional use permit.
Motion's been made. Can we get a second?
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass. All right. Cool PZ 1805-13. A public hearing to discuss the proposed amendment to Section 302 of the zoning code, changing the definition of garage private. The definition being changed is a completely enclosed accessory. I'm sorry, the proposed change is a completely enclosed accessory building or accessory portion of the main building used for shelter or storage of self-propelled vehicles, recreational vehicles, and or boats.
Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioners, as you remember, we talked about this before, and just, we were concerned about the code enforcement part of it. Tim and I and staff has been discussing it, and we believe at this point the zoning code itself and the different classifications are strong enough where if we needed to, we could use those to say you can't use this for commercial use in a residential area. So we would use the actual designation like R1 because it doesn't allow that use, and use that. But at least this clarifies the definition and makes it a lot simpler to read than what we had previously, was a third of the total vehicles and all those things. So this makes it very simple. So I think, Tim, you're in agreement. I think that will work.
I agree, and staff is recommending approval. The ordinance has been brought back to you as directed in the previous meeting when we discussed this. This is also a public hearing, the first of two. There will be one at council too, and final approval or denial of the change.
Right.
Perfect. All right. This time, we'd like to open it up to the public. Anybody like to comment on Cool PZ 1805-13? No? We'll close the public hearing. If there's no further discussion, we'll entertain a motion.
I motion to approve Cool PZ 1805-13 as presented with the amendments discussed.
I would second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moving on. Item D on the agenda. Cool PZ 1806-18. A conditional use permit submitted by Pinnell Land Holdings for a solar farm, PL8 Steel Solar, located generally between Steel Road, State Route 87, Vale Road, and Selma Highway in Coolidge, Arizona. APNs 4012-1057C, 401205 or 10590, thank you. 4012-1060A, 4012-1060B, 40140001D, 40140002A, 40140004B, 40150010, 40186003A, 40180040, and 40186060, comprising of 1,174 acres, more or less.
Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioners, this is, as you're aware, and I've reported this to you before, we've been working very closely with Pinnell Land Holdings on developing the area south of us. This is part of the Mesa Water Farm annexations and totaling over 11,000 acres. This portion is part of the industrial development portion of it. We've been getting a lot of requests for solar, and with the efforts towards turning towards green energy, we see a lot of the businesses that are looking, industrial businesses that are looking to locate, talking about potentially getting green energy. So we've been working real closely and talking to the utility companies, and really it's more Pinnell Land Holdings have been talking to utility companies and looking at partnering to provide the green energy. And because of all the activity with the on the solar, working with Pinnell Land Holdings, we identified properties that they would like to bring forward that meet that style of or type of use according to our plans, and we wanted to bring them forward. We're basically being proactive. These properties do not have an actual applicant as of yet. This is a developer and the city bringing this forward to you, being proactive so that we have the use in place. All of these that follow will have to come back to you for site plan approval. So very specific items on the site plan will need to come back, so you can then work on whether the setbacks and how many trees go here, what roads get improved. So this is strictly just approving the use for this property.
About how we handled the last solar farm.
Correct. Vice Chair. So I just wanted to give you a little information, and we also have done some research on the heat island effect of solar panels, and we have that up there that we show that inside the actual the solar farm, typically you have some increase in temperatures, but it generally dissipates back to normal within, I think, 100 feet of the edge, and this is more along the lines of what you see the Next Era project that was placed over near 11 Mile Corner, and just a little bit, it's about a mile to the east of 11 Mile Corner Road and then south of 287. And if you notice, those panels aren't very tall. They're a dark color. They absorb light. There's a nice fence in front of it. There's some landscaping to bring down the effect, and so that's what we're proposing on these. You'll see the stipulations require that, and we will have some very specific stipulations that we can read to you if you'd like. And we have copies of those up front, so if anybody in the audience would like a copy of the heat island report and some of the things that we just took in the maps. So there are different maps, so I know people are in different areas, so you're more than welcome to take a copy, please. And Tim, do you have anything else to add to this?
In reviewing this with staff and the applicants, we've worked through some things that could mitigate some of the perceived negative effects here. In your packet, there's the map that's on screen, and all of the little call-outs on the map are included in the recommended conditional use permit under Section 2 special conditions, such as, we'll go through the list. All driveways and parking areas must be paved. Perimeter fencing around the project shall be chain link, powder coated dark green or brown in color. Landscaping shall be installed in accordance with Article 12 of the City of Coolidge zoning code along street frontages of State Route 87, Corman Road, La Palma Road. I think I'm on the wrong one. Okay, I'm gonna, conditions 1 and 2 are as read. Landscaping shall be installed in accordance with Article 12 of the City Code along the street frontages of Steel Road, State Route 87, and Selma Highway. The applicant agrees to dedicate to the City of Coolidge without compensation 75 feet along the south side of Steel Road of the subject property for right-of-way purposes. The applicant agrees to dedicate to the City of Coolidge without compensation 75 feet along the east side of State Route 87 of the subject property for right-of-way purposes. The applicant agrees to dedicate to the City of Coolidge without compensation 100 feet along the north side and south side of Selma Highway of the subject property for right-of-way purposes. Number 7, the applicant agrees to chip seal at no cost to the city the Selma Highway from State Route 87 to Vale Road. And the applicant agrees to combine the project parcels to the maximum extent allowed through the County Assessor's Office land combination process. The conditions in Section 3 of the conditional use permit are standard conditions applied to every conditional use permit. So all those things are delineated on the map you got. We actually went through and calced what their landscape requirements would be per code, and gave some estimates of what that chip seal would cost.
So I have a question for you as far as the 75 feet that they're dedicated as frontage road on 87. Didn't we ask the other solar farm to give us 150 feet?
We very well may have. The right-of-way dedications are based on the roadway classification in our comprehensive transportation plan. If we asked for 100 feet on that other one, it would have been a 200.
200 feet. Am I right?
We would have been on both sides of the road, and that road would have been designated a parkway with the ultimate width of 200 feet for right-of-way. State Route 87, Steel Road are designated as principal arterials in our plan, our transportation plan, which have an ultimate right-of-way width of 150 feet. So ultimately 75 on the south side, 75 on the north side. They can't dedicate the north. It's not part of this project. They don't own it. So we get what we can as it develops. And that's the reason for the variation. Selma Highway, we're getting 100 on both sides for a 200-foot total, but that has a parkway designation in the county transportation plan. So that's the reason for the variation in widths.
My thought was the arterial highway from the inland project.
That's Selma Highway. That's the Selma Highway.
87 may potentially end up bigger than a principal arterial at some point in time, but our current study we have does not support that. So our recommendation is based on what we have available. It's not on here, but it should be noted that a portion of this project is not currently in city limits. The area in red shown on this map is part of an active annexation. It's filed. We've held initial public hearings on it in June, and we are wrapping up the details to be able to finalize that and hopefully get it to council very soon. The permit has no effect on those parcels unless they are in the city.
And we've taken this kind of action before to get prepared for the annexation, so we try to run them concurrently, and so we can prepare in case an applicant comes up. And so a lot of time it's being ready for the business to come in and helping the developer so that we're all ready to go if that comes up. So that's why you see this type of activity brought to you.
Yeah, I was just looking at it to be consistent with what we've done in the past.
Absolutely. Absolutely. More questions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
We have a lot of things that's listed on the front end of the project. How about things that happen on the back end of when the project is completed and solar farm is no longer needed? What happens?
Commissioner Metcalf, we've discussed that at length with the applicant, and really it's looked upon as a holding zone, because these have a window of about 20-25 years, because that's usually the power agreement with SRP or APS or the utilities. And as technology increases and gets better, the amount of solar panels you need probably decreases, so they could start selling some of the property off. So you may see a better use come up where this is an active use right now that is good for the property, but in the future these properties will be developed for a better and higher use. The value will go up over time, and that's kind of how it happens. There are zones in our zoning codes. The county, we had the same thing with mobile home parks. They were a holding zone back in the day where it was for better and future development. So we're seeing that with these solar farms also.
Okay, so the solar farm do they remove them, the panels? Or is there a condition that they have to remove them if the solar farm is no longer needed?
Well, Commissioner Metcalf, I think in a case like that, it depends on what is done between the property owner and the new buyer, or if it's the same property owner. If they take off part of them, or there's an agreement where the new buyer comes in and does something, we'll be involved with that, because they'll have to change their site plan and do something. But we've taken that into account as we work through these. So
okay,
that can also be brought up during the site plan section of it. We can talk about that if you'd like.
because the site plan is going to change. If they build a building out there, it's going to change.
Right. It could be, and if there's a major change to the site plan, it comes back to you, and if it's a
Okay.
real minor where it's a small little thing, then we handle it. All right? Does that help? Is that
That answered my question.
Okay.
Probably several others along with it.
good?
So it's kind of fortuitous that this is brought to us today, since we've had rolling, blackouts for the last week and a half here.
Yeah, they're not related.
I don't know how often you
Related.
reset your clock, but I think I've done mine 2 or 3 times this
Yes.
week.
And I've been assured that that's a switch that was not APS, and it was just kind of a switch that disperses the power to different entities, and that's what was the problem. So I've heard that's been corrected, from my understanding.
It was only
I've heard that
APS.
story before.
All right, so should we open this up to the public?
Yes, sir.
Would anybody from the public like to come to the podium and speak on this matter?
Please step up to the podium
Please
and
step
state
up
your
to the
address,
podium.
please. With the mic. Yes, please.
Yes, ma'am. State your name and your address.
Susan Mangum.
Pull the microphone down to your, there you go.
Susan Mangum. Pinedale, Arizona. We own property on the corner of Cornman and Highway 87. I'd like to know who owns this farm, who is going to control it, and who is going to keep it like it says it is. Who's responsible for it?
I believe that's the next item.
Yes.
It's
You,
the answer will be the same though. Right now on this one and the other properties, they're either controlled by Pinal Land Holdings that has
By whom?
Pinal Land Holdings, and he's here, he can speak to the properties, and it's Jakob Anderson's the principal, or it's Pinal Land Holdings or Saint Holdings. They're AKA. They're doing both business as.
And he owns the land?
Well, he himself, or he has first right of refusal from the city of Mesa, because all this property that we're looking at mostly is the city of Mesa, and so some of it he's purchased, some of it will be purchased, and that's how the deal is structured. And he can maybe shed more light on it if you have questions. And Mr. Chair, if you'd like him to address some of that, he's here. Yes.
Sir, would you like to step up?
Good evening, Commission. I appreciate you inviting me up to discuss this matter with you. Can you hear me? Okay, there we go. Well, I'm a bit taller than you. Thank you. Let me answer the question directly, because I think your question was who's going to maintain and look after this once it's built. To be very clear, we're not solar developers. We've worked very closely with the city, as we have done for many years, to land plan the 11,500 acres that we've acquired from the city of Mesa. And in doing so, over the years, we've progressed our land planning and dealt with users in the industrial world, home builders that are coming into town, and now solar, that we had no knowledge of a couple of years ago. We're not the solar developers. We won't be developing this land as the solar developer. We are preemptively looking at portions of the land that lay within the city limits that we had annexed into the city, and looked at what are the best pieces of land that potentially a solar company could come and develop a solar park on. It's a temporary use for the land. They are 20 to 30 year PPAs, power purchase agreements. It may be that it's leased by us to the solar company. It may be that the solar company buys it out in its entirety. But to answer your question directly, it ends up being that entity that maintains and looks after the property, the surrounding fence line inwards. And that's going to be mandated, I'm assuming, in the city's demands within the site plan approval process. Today is very simply, in my mind, a conditional use permit for the permitted use of potential solar on the land. I don't want to oversimplify it, but it's not us that's building a solar plant. That comes to you later on and becomes a much more formal process where someone sends you pretty thorough site plans for you to approve, and as long as they are in accordance with what is governed today, then you can rule on that then.
That's correct.
If that makes sense. And if any, I am part of Pinal Land Holdings, and we've been before the Commission before, and we've worked with the city since 2011. Why is this land so important to us? Why is this good for solar or important to us? Okay, so let me answer that on this particular property. If you look at this piece of property, what it doesn't show you is some of the other nuances that go on this particular piece of property. You have the it's part of a larger master plan, just so we're clear. So to the south of this property, we're land planning in accordance with the city, an industrial park that will hopefully bring manufacturing and jobs to the area. Meanwhile, we're maintaining all the agriculture in the area. We're farming 100% of the land, and we're working very closely with the farmers. We used to farm 50% of it ourselves. We put it in the hands of some local guys who are very, very qualified and are doing a great job out in the field. So we'll start with that. Agriculture gets maintained, number one. Number two, land planning of the area that we've acquired is a little bit more complex because the land is not one big contiguous piece. It's various pieces split over about 12.5 miles long and about 7 miles wide. So we've worked closely with the city and the county and looked at what the county in the past and the city in the past have looked at as their planning, major plans for their cities and their cities' growth. And we have worked with them to make sure that that is continued and sustained in the roadways that are wanted and needed for the future and the needed growth for the area, or the growth that's suspected to happen, so that we grow organically and properly in conjunction with the city. The areas that are land planned for residential, for industrial, are done so in accordance with the general plans and the plans that were already in place by the city and or the county before the annexations took place. This particular piece of land lends itself well to solar because what you're not seeing on here is we have a lot of infrastructure in this area that is crisscrossed by big power companies that is out of our control. TEP, Tucson Electric Power, SunZia, they run directly through, I'm going to point to make it easy for you to see. Yeah, okay, thank you. So right there, we've had to give up 150-foot easements, 200-foot easements for big power lines that have big poles with lots of wires on them. That doesn't lend itself to have, and we can't put houses or anything around there, and industry can't often locate near there because of the size of their buildings. The rail lines are unable to accommodate industrial users where the big power lines crisscross there. SRP has a line that goes into the property and north of that property, and then we're fully dissected by the railway lines there, if you want to point that out. And here also there are two other things that we're dissected by, which is the two blue lines, which is the two San Carlos irrigation ditches. So this portion of the property in question that we deal with in its entirety is a little more difficult in terms of land planning for, let's say, residential or industrial. And we've got the residential to the north and the northwest, and we've got the industrial being planned to the south. And I think Director Lopez mentioned, what we do, we work very closely with the city too on attracting businesses, manufacturers to the region. And what we're commonly seeing now is that a lot more of them are putting a requirement in their PIF. A PIF is a project information form that we're required to fill out to almost showcase Coolidge, showcase the property and its ability to attract them as a business to create jobs in the region. And with that, a lot of them these days, they ask for workforce population, access to highways, road access, local schooling, local population. But one of the things they're all beginning to write is green energy. They want to be part of a green energy program. We have substations in this area. When you look at this piece here, to the north you have the Randolph substation by SRP. They don't service the area SRP, but it's a substation that they can add power to and then supply power to the region. To the south of here and slightly to the west by the prison, there is an Eureka substation by APS. And again, that's a substation that APS serves south of this area. In fact, they serve this portion of land too, and to the south. And then slightly to the west of this land, on 287 to the south, where the Next Era project went, there's the Pinal Central. That's one of the country's largest substations, where all those power providers I mentioned earlier all go into that substation, and that's why they chose that location. What we have here is that everything that goes into that substation from the east and the west and the north crisscrosses right through this piece of land. So it seemed like an appropriate piece of land that is not even close to being developed for any other use at this point. So it seemed very good, and from a city perspective, we can talk about Coolidge being green and looking to the future of. I've got 3 young boys, 10, 9, 8, and I sound funny. I'm from England, but I've lived here for 14 years. My wife's a 5th generation Arizonan, and her great grandfather was brought up in Coolidge. So it's funny how the world goes round. But I look at it as we're borrowing this world from our children. So for Coolidge and us to work in tandem and have a green energy program in place and be ahead of that and tell them where to be rather than them standing, the solar companies coming here and standing in front of us telling us where they're putting their projects, I think is an excellent step forward by Coolidge. I'm happy to answer any more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not a solar developer. No, we've had since the NextEra project. I know very little about solar, but I'll tell you, yes, many solar companies have approached us. However, what you'll find is there's lots of solar companies, and they don't do business with us. They're trying to do business with SRP or APS to sell them power, and a lot of the time it's related to RFPs, requests for proposals, that those companies will put out. There is a scattershot of little solar projects that are trying to be located in our immediate area here, and we know about some of them. We know about maybe none of them, but it's all about the SRP and APS's need for the power and their ability to put out an RFP that they can award to someone, which I guess with APS is heavily governed by the ACC, and they're mandated in themselves to have to choose a project and a provider that is able to sign a 20 to 30 year power purchase agreement without failing them, because they're putting that contract in their books as their percentage of green energy supply for their carbon footprint, that they're saying to the state, look, we're doing really well, we've got a green project here. So I'm guessing that's way above my pay grade. That's the big boys of APS and SRP that figure that one out.
Thank you.
Do you want to talk on here? Or?
Tim?
These meetings are recorded, and so for the record, you need to go to the podium, name, address, and then speak if you
Name's Nathan
please.
Goldman. My address is 5815 East Still Road. I live on Goldman Dairy. I find it kind of comical that we're so concerned about green energy here in Coolidge when, as we just proposed, it's going on APS and SRP, which is in Phoenix. So we're dealing with their carbon footprint here, and we get stuck with the solar panels. That's beside the point. I noticed on the site plan here around Goldman Dairy and the residentials that one of the houses I live in on the west side, there is no setbacks, there's no trees, shrubberies, or anything designated in that, but there is around all the rest of the residential structures. There's also nothing around the dairy itself or any of that as far as the heat element. I don't know if they have anything in that plan, but sure.
So I appreciate you getting up and speaking, and I would say that in the past we've reached out to you a few times, and we set up a couple of meetings in probably 2011, 2012 to try and meet with you. So if I could get your details, then actually have a meeting would be great, because I stood outside your house once for about 30 minutes. So that was in 11. So I hope we can meet and actually discuss these things, because our intention was to meet with all the neighbours. And you might know the name Matthew McCormick from my office, because I think he had contacted someone from your family. So thank you for being here. To address the around the dairy landscaping issue, I think that the city's mandate, and maybe Tim could clarify this further, there is going to be a setback requirement in the site plan approval process from the neighbouring lot line. It's not addressed here with landscaping because it's not a road, it's not a Coolidge road, it's a setback from a neighbour. Is that correct?
The landscaping requirements are based on street frontages,
right,
where that portion of the code applies. The building setbacks for this use are 50 feet from the property line, so there's nothing within 50 feet of your property. The heat island effect dissipates within 100 feet of the panels.
But I think the question is, should that be addressed on this, or would that be addressed later on in the site plan approval by the end user applicant?
It
Right. That's the question.
additional landscaping or setbacks could be addressed
The
in
setback
either
requirement,
either this or a site plan. It is the commission's pleasure to do so.
Yeah, normally it's during the site plan portion of it when they come back and say,
Right.
okay, this is, ABC Solar,
Right.
and they're going to sell power to SRP or APS, and then that's when they come up with a plan that staff can look at and look at setbacks, where the roads are going to go, where the landscaping is, and then once we work that out, then that plan comes before planning and zoning, and then all of you are notified again, surrounding property owners, just like this one, so you know that the plan's coming up. So then you can see it and say, okay, I want more buffer, I'd like to have this, and then they can kind of work through that. And so that's where that portion, those really specific items take place. Typically is in the site plan part of it. So I hope that helps.
I have one other question. I noticed when gentleman asked about the end use in the 25 years, I kind of got a non-answer. So apparently it's just up to whoever so we could potentially be left with broken down solar panels left for us to deal with in the future.
Well, certainly we don't want to see that, obviously, but it is a private business, and for us, it's like your dairy. When you went in for the county, we didn't say, well, what if you just walk away and leave all the buildings up? What happens? And obviously, you're a businessman. That's probably not in your plans to happen. You're going to sell the property, and then if you do sell it, it's going to be developed, or whatever you decide. But I don't know that the city. We try to put those safeguards in, but to plan 25 years to tell them how they're going to deal with that specific issue, I think the business would say they're going to negotiate, work together to clear that property for the better and higher use, because we know it's going to be worth a lot more money. And I would doubt that they would just leave those panels up, and unless the new buyer is going to take them. That we don't see that as and I agree. We did think about that. We talked about it. And City Manager Miller, I don't know if you want to say something, and per our discussion, we've had some pretty in-depth talk about that kind of situation.
Vice Chair Halby and members of the commission, members of the audience, Rick Miller, City Manager. We've had a lot of conversations with the solar companies in the past, and this very question has come up. I oftentimes worry about the end result at the end of the life of these. What are we left with? The answer that I'm typically provided by the solar companies is that the value of the materials on this property is significant, and recycling is important. A lot of these people will take these out because of the value of the steel. These poles are driven into the ground with devices. They're not concreted in, they're pounded into the ground. The solar panels are put on top. There's a lot of material in these solar panels that have value from a recycling standpoint. So the answer that I've always been provided is when these things at the end of the life, there's either the company will take it out or they will recycle or hire a recycler. The city just removed a whole bunch of metal. A metal recycler came in and bid on our metal or scrap metal and took it all. In all likelihood, the recycling value of this material will resolve the situation. And keep in mind, this is a significantly large piece of property that has tremendous value. One thing that we haven't even talked about on this exhibit is that the north-south freeway corridor that's been discussed in the past, it's so critical to the economic development of the region, runs along the east boundary of this property. That's another situation here, that Jakob didn't mention. You've got a rail, you've got Highway 87, you have the north-south freeway corridor, you have a couple of large canal systems, you have the transmissions lines running through, you have a dairy, which is an industry in itself. And face it, agriculture is industry. And, this is an industrial corridor. I don't envision that the highest and best use for this property in the long term is going to be solar panels. It's going to be something much greater than solar panels, whether it's going to be commercial development along the north-south freeway corridor or industrial development. I don't see a lot of opportunity for housing on this property because of those situations that exist in this area. So it's really going to be commercial industrial related. But that's really the best answer I can give on the what happens in the 20, 25 years life. I hope these lights don't go out. They're sure flickering a lot.
I think what you're thinking about, we will be around 25 years from now.
Well, you'll probably be around still. Well, you guys looking pretty healthy to me.
I think that
Sir, can you please step up to the podium?
I'm Tom Mangum from Pinedale, Arizona, and I've owned this property for a bunch of years. But I think we ought to leave 87 to be developed instead of tie it up and put a bunch of solar panels out there within the 10 acres of that area that could produce something for the community. And I'm not looking at 25 years. Next year or two, we need to be moving and doing something. There's a lot of land that we've bought in other places that is fruitful. And this is stalemated for 10, 15 years, and it hasn't gone anyplace. Mesa came in and bought the water on this property. Now they're going to put a solar system. It's not going to benefit us as far as looks. Along that corridor, they're so valuable, coming out of Tucson and into the backside of Phoenix and Mesa area. You know, we've got that potential. That's why I bought the property. That's why it's the southwest corner of the 40 that was on that property. I built homes and subdivision for 43 years, from Tucson all the way up to Kingman. But I see potential here, but we were stalemated, and if we let something like this take that avenue there, set them back. They could put that almost any place, but it's advantageous to go ahead and have it where that plant that could pick up the electricity and put it back in the system. To live off the grid is nice, but I don't think we ought to jeopardize the frontage on that road, on each side of that road, all the way through. Sure, we live in Eloy, but we're across the street from Coolidge, so it affects us tremendously. And this is our money that we've invested in, and we'd like to get it out. And I don't see something like this unless they cut that corridor back and bring it back where it's not affecting that roadway, where the potential is the roadway, not on any others, just 87. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are just talking about the conditional use permit, okay? All we're asking for, or all this gentleman is asking for, is the use to be proposed and allowed on this land. He's not developing it. I do know that it's one of my concerns. 87 is our gateway into our town. I would like to see it as well. But that here and now isn't the time. I believe as they go forward and do their major site plan, that would be the time for us to request that setback and that requirement.
Well, I just want to get on record, be sure that everybody there knows that that's valuable property. Anything connected with 87 more valuable than 2 or 3 miles back in Auckland. And the potential should grow.
Chairman Halby, if I may, I'd like to remind everyone, we are talking about this one on screen. We have 4 of these tonight. They will each have a public hearing, but this one on the screen now is the one we're talking about. Your comments are still valid, but if we're not talking about the steel one, please wait until the one that you live by.
I may just for your comfort, if I may just address the gentleman.
Yes, sir.
You say you live in Eloy and you're near the 87, you've got real estate holdings there that you want to have land value on. Lovely. So to the south, we're planning an industrial park that's going to be of high benefit to you and your property values, and the Highway 87 portion of that is reserved for and has been zoned as I2 industrial. And we're probably the predominant industrial developers in the area, having built Central Arizona Commerce Park in Casa Grande that brought Tractor Supply to the area. I brought Lucid to the area, and various other businesses located over there. So I'm glad to hear you're there, and actually I think you'll end up being a winner in the situation in the location you are in Eloy, because we're on the other side of the road from you there in the proactive development area. For his sake, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Ma'am?
My name's Deanna Goldman, and I live on Goldman Dairy. I've been there since 2012, so I didn't get to talk to you. Look forward to it. I just wanted to address some things I had read about decommissioning the solar panels, and he had been talking about recycling. One of the problems they find is that it's toxic waste, and often solar panel, the people that put in the solar panels, they lease instead of purchase the property. When you were talking about our dairy, well, we purchase the property. So we care what it's like when we walk away because we want to be paid for it. If they're leasing the property, they don't have that care for it. And a lot of it's toxic waste because there's metals like cadmium, I don't know, and rare earth elements. And their expected lifespan's 20 years. So I just wanted to add that. This is on the internet.
Thank you. Please.
I'll address that too. So I totally understand the leasing element versus the ownership element. You're not as in love with your land as when you own it. But if we're owning it and we're leasing it to someone, we're as in love with your land as you are with yours. And in the lease, we would stipulate that, and we would be covered by a deposit that would allow us to go in and claim what they call self-help. So if someone puts something on any of our land that we would ever lease to them, whether I'm leasing a building or I'm leasing for solar, I would make sure that our company was covered to be able to handle that and for it to be disposed of in such a manner that it would go to somewhere like Heritage, the environmentally friendly, well, not environmentally friendly, but they handle environmentally hazardous waste in the city here. So that would be an example of how one would handle that. So, but thank you for addressing it.
Just a couple of comments. I think Thomas Edison was the one who's, I think he's a pretty sharp cookie, once said there's two criteria for making an invention work. First, will it work? And second, is it economically feasible to do that? The last time I checked on solar and wind, it's 2.5 times the cost for megawatt of power than it is for conventional natural gas, coal, nuclear. The only reason it's working, people, is because it's our back pockets is supplying these guys, subsidizing this outfit. They're going to come out okay. They have a right to do with their property as they please. If they can make money on it, that's fine. That's why I built my dairy. And by the way, I'm Jim Goldman from Goldman Dairy. Or failed to say that. We had neighbors that objected having a dairy there. But I have a right to develop it. They have a right too. So in all things that they're going to take money out of my back pocket, it seems logical that they give me enough buffer zone so that I wouldn't have to look at those very unaesthetic reflectors or whatever they're going to use, solar panels. It just sure doesn't look like a nice green field to me, any way you cut it. So please, I would say I at least need about a 300-400 foot setback, and we can work something out. But if they're going to be stubborn about it, I guess I'll have to oppose them.
Thank you. Please. Again, sir, as long as it's relevant to this CUP.
Oh, it's relevant.
Very good.
My name is Steve Reese with Langley Properties. We are located in Gilbert, Arizona. I'm just here, you know, I've been involved in 2 or 3 solar projects that are now up and running. I've been involved in 1 wind project that is currently just north of Snowflake up and running. And in my experience, and maybe for some reason it's being handled in a different order here, but we've never gone before a zoning board and asked for any zoning changes unless we had a buyer in tow. In other words, any time that we're before a board like you guys, we have a buyer who's already agreed to buy the electricity, SRP, APS, whoever. So I'm not sure, I guess this is being done on a speculative basis, but I'm just not sure that the importance of having a buyer in tow is that they've gone through all the analysis and determined everything that you're being told about this being a good site for solar. Someone who makes a living analyzing those things could have a completely different perspective. So I don't know, are we relying on just what the landowner is saying about it being a good site for solar, or do we have professionals that understand that business telling or advising you guys that this is in fact a good project for solar? You know, one of the things, questions I would have, other than who is the buyer, and I guess that hasn't been answered yet, is where is the point of interconnection, and where is this project or this landowner in the queue there? Because there could be 5 or 6 people ahead of him in the queue for all I know. I do not know, but I'm just saying that being in the queue and getting in line there is important. And if I was making a zoning decision on this land, I would want to know, where is this project in the queue? Are there other people ahead of it in the queue, or is this project, you know, first in line? And I don't know the answer to that, but if I was on a zoning board about to make a decision on 1,400 plus acres or whatever, I would want to know that for the project, and I would also want to know who the buyer is going to be. Because until you have a buyer, you don't really have, you know, you can talk about solar all day long, but until you have someone who's committed to write those checks for 25 years, you don't really have a buyer. But anyway.
Right now, sir, this is a conditional use permit hearing, so the gentleman is asking the board to decide whether or not we'd allow the use.
Right.
Whether or not he decides to build or act upon that, he has to come back before us at a later date for that use.
Okay.
The use is being discussed right now.
Okay, and all I'm saying is I've been involved in 3 or 4 of these projects already, and the order, it just seems to me that when we've gone before the boards and asked for the, you know, conditional use permit or whatever the zoning changes were, we had a buyer in tow that was in the queue and had their place established. And I'm not saying that they're doing it wrong, because it's not my place to say that, but I'm just saying that typically before we would ask for this type of a designation, a land designation or whatever, we would have a buyer in tow, someone who makes a living in this business, who had already gone through the analysis and determined that this was in fact a good, viable site. And that's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Please.
So I appreciate your comments, and again, I think you are absolutely correct, Vice Chair, that this is a CUP hearing, and being from Langley Holdings, you should know that. Stacey Brimhall is a friend of mine. I'm the Vice Chairman of Pinnell Partnership, and I sit on that board with, and I serve with the pleasure of Stacey. So he knows how proactive I am and how I work in tandem with people and how we work arm in arm with the governmental entities that we do. And what we're trying to do here is get permission, as you said, Vice Chair, to very simply give Coolidge the ability to win some solar projects in areas that the staff and us as the landowners deem the right land and the correct areas for such projects to be. And we think that's actually the right way to go about it, rather than have big solar companies come in to your chambers and bully you into giving them permissions that they say they have a legal right to have in areas that you may not want them. So that's our view. And on the idea of us having a lack of knowledge, I mean, we've been at this for many, many years. You are very prominent landowners and developers yourselves, and I congratulate you on your achievements, but so are we. And the advice we've taken here is not just me reading the newspaper headlines that NextEra located a solar farm around the corner. We've taken professional advice from lawyers, in fact, lawyers that we share with your company, and APS themselves, and SRP. In fact, my lunch meeting today was 3 people within APS discussing why these sites are good for that location, and all the way down to their staff level and their engineers. So a lot of methodical work has gone into this, and your staff is very well aware of that, and that's why we stand before you today. Thank you.
And Mr. Vice Chair, if I can add, from a staff level, we, as you know, you've heard me up here before, that a lot of these PIFs come out from the ACA And one of the questions they ask is this property ready to go? We want to hit the ground running, and we'll get beat out by somebody, another community that's thought ahead and is ready to go. And so, you know, being in charge of economic development along with the city manager and also community development, our team is really focused on being prepared, being proactive, and getting Coolidge out there and winning these projects. So we want to do it right. We're careful in how we do it, and we bring it to you for consideration. So that's the open process of this. So I just wanted to add that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
I know from being a developer myself that we usually go through this process, and the conditional use just grants him the permission to use it for this use. Whether or not he does, that's up to him. Very good. All right. Anybody else from the public like to speak? No? So we'll close the public hearing. If there's any further discussion, I'd like to make a motion.
Mr. Vice Chair, I move that we approve Cool PZ 180618 conditional use permit for the possible use as a solar farm in this area.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Next item on the list, Cool PZ 1807-22, a conditional use permit submitted by Pinnell Land Holdings for a solar farm located generally between Selma Highway, Corman Road, and Sunshine Boulevard and State Route 87 in Coolidge, Arizona. Arizona parcel numbers 4014-80030, 4014-80050, 4014-80060, comprising of 640 acres, more or less.
Vice Chair, Commission members, as we talked about earlier, this is another project that we have within the Mesa water farm annexations and acquisitions that staff has looked at and deems this to be a good site for potential solar farm use. So this is before you again as the other one was. With that in mind, we provided a map, some of the same stipulations about dedication of roadway to the city for the uses, and so this we have two more after this, but this one is specific to this site, which is, we call this the Corman annexation. And so we'll be here to answer any questions that may come up during the public hearing, unless you have any now.
Tim, you want to give us your recommendations?
We've looked at this site. It's ag land. There's a couple dozen houses on the south side of Corman Road. So I think there's some concern there. We've talked to a few people. And they were opposed. One of them was opposed, and the other two were just seeking information. Probably the main concern I got from the people I talked to was heat islands, which I would be concerned too. These houses on the south side of Corman Road, their front doors are 50 foot from the road. We're asking for an additional 55 feet along Corman Road on the north side, with landscaping on the other side of that and solar panels not within 50 feet of that property line. That's going to put those solar panels over 100 feet from those people's front doors. And in the studies that I've read, the heat dissipates by then, even before then, once you incorporate that landscape buffer that we're requiring. Additionally, on the north side of Cornman Road, there's an irrigation canal outside of the right-of-way, which will ultimately probably increase that buffer beyond that. But based on the information available, I don't think a heat island should be an issue for these residents.
So, Mr. Vice Chair, we, with those remedies available to us and the developer, we recommend approval.
I think they're not going to see much heat with 176 trees on that road.
I think the trees would be nice to look at, but I think the trees would be nice to look at. I mean, the landscaping mitigates the looking at the panels, certainly.
176 trees and 528 shrubs on that one side.
For each mile stretch, yes.
It's like 10 acres deep in between trees. That's not many trees.
Their code requires 1 tree and 3 shrubs per 30 feet. Yes. The way the trees are symbolized on there is not accurately placing them. Yeah, that doesn't look like very many trees at all. It's a pittance of what's actually required, but code requires 1 tree, 3 shrubs per 30 feet of street frontage. It will be significant.
It will be significant. We can open it to the public. Sure. Would like to speak on this one?
Just to mention again, I'm Tom Mangum. If we set back at least 10 acre square off from 87, it wouldn't bother me. But I think we shouldn't use that property, 87, for to tie it up with something that might not be feasible, because it's got more potential than that. I just want to protect that. That's my main concern. Hopefully I'll live to see it.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Nicole Block, and I live at 2940 East Paloma Road off of Cortman. And I'm here with several of my neighbors, and we all have pretty much the same concern about property value, what it will do to our property value. You talk about industrialization, but what exactly is that going to do to the area? And then also, a lot of us are on a well, and we're wondering how that will affect our well water.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I have a list.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Just one thing at a time.
My name's Nora Platt, and I live at 4863 South Margaret Avenue, and I'm nervous, sorry. So, when we first heard about the solar farm, we thought the same thing about the property value, because you buy out here and we're fixing up a place, not to mention the view, because we're one of those people right on the street. Our house is a modular home, so we sit off the ground. So those trees, it's going to take a long time before they block the solar panels for us. I made a list, because when I started looking into it, I'm like, well, okay, so this is green, this is good for the environment. Well, when I started looking into it, it's actually not as green as you think it would be. You've already discussed the panels being dispersed of, but the other lady that spoke earlier was correct. They have a hard time recycling them. It is toxic waste. I have several pamphlets and different media that I brought, studies from across the United States and the world about leaking, contaminating groundwater contamination with leaks from the solar panels. When they clear the land, they have to use dust suppressants, diuretic fluids, herbicides and pesticides, and pre-emergence, because you're going to have weeds. It changes the habitat of the animals. We have a lot of hawks that are really fun to watch and go over there in the green that we look at right now. There's been incidences of spills. You have to worry about airborne chemicals, especially when building and taking back down. You have a fire danger. The fire danger is because fire people cannot go into the solar fields because they can only go so far because they can get electrocuted. So they have to have a special deal with fire departments. They have to have a plan of how to, do that if that's going on. And I have backup for all of this, including the heat index. My article didn't say 100 feet. Sorry. It also talked about the glare and the glint. This is from the FAA, from airplanes. The FAA recommends that, especially on final approach, that there be no closer than 5 nautical miles. I'm not sure how far the Eloy Airport is and the skydivers, but the skydivers literally circle our house, and we are on Cornman. So the glint and glare could be a problem for them. I don't want a plane crash into my house. Let's see. Sorry, there was so many more things. Did I forget anything? They said it could change the drainage. It also said, now this is a much bigger farm, but some of the bigger farms, this is the one on Cornman, is supposed to be 650 plus or minus acres, but birds can fly over there, and the heat index of the birds, it burns the end of their feathers, and then they can't fly, and then they go down, and that changes the whole insects and different critters that come underneath the solar panels. Some people have gotten away. Some people, one farm in a different country, actually planted lettuce underneath that to try to make it so that it would be a better habitat and not have all that kind of things going on. It can also change the rainfall. It changes it can change rainfall and drainage because of the heat. It also attracts lightning. They have to put special solar panels from what I've seen and researched, and I've only just done a little tiny bit of research. They said that they have to put something around solar places in order to make sure that the lightning doesn't hit, because if the lightning hits and if one of those things breaks, these chemicals, a little tiny bit of breath of that will give you bad lungs. If you have a big breath, you'll die. It kills plants, it kills animals. I'm not against it, but what I will tell you is when I started investigating, it scared me to death because I thought it was green, and yes, we want to do it. We just wanted to move further away because we didn't want it that close to our house for the land values and everything else. But the more I've looked into it, it scared the heck out of me. And they're right about the cost too. And the solar farm you guys were talking about off of, I think it's 87 over near 11 Mile Road. If I remember my research correct, I think that electricity goes to California. So those are my main concerns. The contamination thing is big when you're building, big time. And it's going to change the traffic. I was reading your zoning codes, and it was talking in there about that one of the things they have to consider is the traffic conditions and what's going to do to that. So what is that going to do? We're used to a couple farmers coming around, turning their water on. They meet under the tree. They play with their kids. And what's that going to do to us? What kind of people come and build that farm? Who maintains the farm? Who keeps track of, now we have strangers coming in right across the street from us? Are we going to have theft start? We don't have theft where we are. We're like just a small community. So these are the concerns that we have, and I realize you're going to tell me this is just this hearing, but to us it's a big deal. We have all of our whole life savings for us is in this house. So just think about all that before you make your decisions. Sorry.
Thank you.
Chris Platt, 4863 South Margaret. I respectfully ask that you deny this request. My main concern is contaminated groundwater. To stop weeds and plants from growing on 640 acres is going to take a tremendous amount of herbicide. With the added bird deaths, that's going to create several insects and much more pesticides that are going to have to be used, not to mention the toxic ingredients that are in the panels themselves. There's approximately 50 landowners over there, not a couple dozen. Every single one of them is on a well. I'm sure this fine gentleman will come up with some study that says it's not going to hurt our property values that much. I ask that you just use the eyeball test and you come over to my house and look out and see acres and acres of green alfalfa, and then you come back and see acres and acres of solar panels. I think you can all decide for yourself. Thank you.
I'm Vicki Fleming, 2683 East Cornman Road. I'm Steve's wife. I don't like it because of the groundwater issue with our stock. I don't like what it's going to do to property value. And I'm with the gentleman that spoke earlier. Before you change the zone, we should know more about exactly what's going to take place. Once you change the zone, what's going to happen? Can they, if the solar panel doesn't come in, is somebody else going to come in and want to do something different, and it's just going to be jammed through there because the zoning's already been changed?
Ma'am, we're not asking, I don't think the gentleman's asking to rezone the property. He's just asking for permission to use the property for his use. He's not asking to rezone.
That's the map right there?
Yes, sir.
That's Cornman going up that side?
Correct.
Please, sir, state your name for the record.
Okay. Well, it's actually backwards. But what would be wrong with moving this piece of property, the solar farm, up to here? My name's Steve Cutler. I live at 2683 East Cornman. Up to Selma. There's not a house on Selma. Not one. And it's the same size of piece of property as what they're talking about. Same property owner. You don't own this? I'm talking about looking at that and moving it to the north. Have they approached you to buy it? It's simple. You got all these houses down here on Cornman, but you got nothing on Selma. And you would have nothing up this, what is it? Krogan Avenue. Like you say, that we said that you've got the toxic waste, you've got the temperature rising. I've been 120 at my house twice this summer. I don't think I can take 130. You can only take so many clothes off before they throw your ass in jail.
Only if you go outside.
Something else I want to say, I can't think of it, and I'm mad. Huh?
My name is Wendell Eyring. I live approximately a little less than a mile south of this proposed project, almost right on La Palma Road. And I'm aware that there is, just another mile south of me along Erica, a large levee, a flood control levee that was built there probably 50 years ago. And its purpose is when the water comes down off the mountains to the south all the way down to Picacho and it runs up against that levee, it's diverted over to Sunshine, where there's a big canal built along Sunshine, a dip in Hannah Road, a dip in Cornman Road, where the water can go on to the north. Approximately 5 to 10 years ago, when they paved the road south, I'm talking about La Palma Road, south from Hannah, they took down that levee about 4 feet. Now, when the rains come from the south, they run over where the levee is supposed to be, and it goes right on down La Palma Road. If you drive out there and take a look, you'll see it goes all the way to Cornman, and there's a lot of weeds and everything along there because that water is coming down off the mountains. Now, I know Tim assured me before we started here that that has nothing to do with this solar project, but we're in a drought. We haven't had much rain. What if it really gets to raining? The amount that the levee was built to direct, it's going to go right straight north on La Palma. It's going to go across Hannah. It already does. It's going to go across Cornman and right across this project. And I would just like people to be aware of that. I've been trying to find out who took down the levee, haven't succeeded yet, but that's going to be an issue with this project, I believe. And I just wanted to pass that on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. My name is Michael Lee. I represent a group of investors that the gentleman was talking about, moving the solar farm from right to left would basically be on our property. But our thinking was, why couldn't they, because they already own the land up on the upper right or upper left, why couldn't they just move that, make it a square mile or whatever, instead of having such a long rectangle? And then it won't affect any of those homes that's currently being affecting now, since there's no homes up there. Just my thoughts.
Sir, please.
I'm writing it down. I'll address it.
Yeah, I'm Steve Cutler again. I've talked to 3 realtors since I got this letter from you folks. Every one of them have told me the same thing. Kiss 50% of your property values goodbye, because it's going to drop them by 50% as close as you are to that thing. Now, I'm 70 years old. I'm pretty well established where I'm at. I don't have time to pick up and go somewhere else. Can't afford to. So when I do get ready to sell my place, are these guys going to come in and give me the other 50% of my property value? I don't think so. Would be nice, but they won't. And I can't afford to get out of there for 50%. As I said, 3 realtors in the area. Thank you.
Hi.
Okay, you have your list.
I've got a little list. It's a bit of a chicken scratch, but I'm going to try and address everyone, and if I haven't, by all means come back up and ask me again. Okay, so I'm not an expert in environmental and those kind of things, but I do want to address some of the things that were said to you, because I think we've got to let that be determined by the professionals. Because when you go through your site plan approval, when the solar developer comes in, if a solar developer comes in here, they're going to have to show environmental reports to you. We already have phase 1s, we already have environmental and archaeological studies for our entire 11,500 acres, and we know what the land is currently, and therefore I'm sure that the city would mandate under that agreement in the future, in the site plan approval, that they maintain the standards that they do. Because this potentially is a solar farm, what I'm understanding with SRP and APS is that they have some rules that they have to abide by, which is mandated in their power purchase agreement, which is that 20 to 30 year agreement that they have, that they've got to conform to some certain rules too. And in that is the environmental and archaeological standards that they have to meet. I don't know what you're referring to directly in terms of what they have their data, but that's what I'm hearing from the professionals and in today's world. I've not seen those documents, but that's what I'm hearing that they're mandated to do. The other issue that a lot of the solar companies have is that when they go for funding, they can't touch or cause environmental issues, or they have problems with their funding. So more than that, I don't know. I'm not the expert. I can read newspaper clippings and give you ideas, but let's let the professionals do that, because this is a CUP for agricultural piece of land to potentially be able to use for solar. That's wells. The concern about wells, solar doesn't use very much water at all. There are a few wells located on this property, so the solar user would probably take them out of commission, and currently this farm is being 100% farmed either in alfalfa, corn or cotton, and so the water usage would be reduced dramatically for the region. The farmers that I deal with, who are probably friends of yours and neighbors, they like the idea of a potential solar deal next to theirs, because they think their water levels will rise because the wells aren't being used right on the neighboring property. So I'm not sure that's as big a concern as you raised, but that's just what I'm hearing. I'm just rebuttaling what I've heard. You talk about industrialization of the area. Let me tell you why this is a good fit. This is the southern portion of the land that we own on the corridor, and what we have next to us is the other side of Highway 87, and we can't appease everyone, but that's where we've got growth. The dark grey area on the top end of this map is us, and that's where we're talking about having Highway 87 be activated. To the left is the other side of Highway 87, which can also be activated. So that helps you in that Highway 87 potential growth, because that's us on the other side, and that's what we're actually trying to do there. The industrial corridor that you see in the dark grey at the top of the map runs actually south, but it looks like it's running east on this map, but it's going that way. That is the 2,700 acres that we have currently rezoned I2, heavy industrial, have Union Pacific permission to have rail service there, and we're working very closely with some end users to potentially locate here in Arizona and on our sites. Those users are often talking, as I said, about the need for green energy, and it may not be that it's a solar company, it may be that it's a industrial user that wants to have solar be part of the feed into their site, because they maybe use 50 or 60 or 70 megawatts of power. The Eureka substation that APS has next to the prison, which is, by the way, your neighbor as well. So industrialization and bringing jobs to the area will only increase your value of your homes. I understand fully that a solar field may decrease the value of a home if you're just looking at that, but if that leads to 2,000 jobs for the area, then who's going to be the buyer of your homes? Those people that are coming into work in that area, and therefore your house prices are going to increase. I've been down in Pinal for 14 years. I developed a project down here at the beginning, just before the recession, and the recession hit. I've stood steadfast here in Pinal, dedicated my life to Pinal, and have gone the distance in Pinal, and it's our time to have some growth and have some increase in property values, and that's only going to happen by bringing in manufacturing, bringing in jobs, and having growth. Stagnant behavior in the development world will not bring that to anyone. So your property values will be secured by the growth of industry. I hope I'm addressing most of these things. Dust suppressants and herbicide concerns, I fully understand you. They are mandated to keep weed control down. But, I mean, I was visiting with the dust crop department earlier today, who crop dust in the area. I mean, these farms are cotton or alfalfa. They're being sprayed every day, either on the field or from the air, with all sorts of herbicides. So, no, but your concern was groundwater. Well, this is going into the groundwater too. Then they're flood irrigating the farm. So, I'm not sure if it's worse or better, but I'm guessing that there are some weed suppressants or ways of mitigating weeds that would be called out in the site plan approval process, not in this process. The fire department concern about getting the fire department to come in here. I'm sure that the city will end up having some sort of a fire access with a fire gate going in there. I mean, the city is pretty sophisticated. You're not going to just let a fire happen and not have access for the fire department. Glare planes, glare from the solar panels. My understanding is the glare issue on solar panels is being addressed by the modern version of these photovoltaics. I'm understanding there are some airports that are now being surrounded by solar, and for the concern about Eloy's airport, Eloy's actually trying to approve a solar project between this project and their own airport right now. So if Eloy's concerned about it, or the residents, which I think all of you are of Eloy, then you should bring it up with them as to a concern to their ongoing business there. But from our understanding, and I think the study that was done on behalf of the county by the project that's up by 287 and 11 Mile Corner, that was addressed, and I believe that's a public document that anyone could go look at. Environmental, we change of the rain conditions and the weather pattern. I'm not sure about that at all. That's way beyond me to say whether or not we're going to start causing rains and thunderstorms if there's a solar deal here. But by all means, do your research. I couldn't answer that question. Can cause death because if someone smells the solar panel, if it cracks, again, beyond my pay grade, we might have to have someone come and address that during the planning and the site plan approval process.
Since you brought that up, I do want to ask one question, because both the lady over here and the gentleman behind her talked about cadmium leaking into the groundwater.
Right.
And I know as a resident of Coolidge, and I have my own wells, I'm concerned about that as well.
Okay. And so I don't know about that, but I'm not the solar developer, and I'm guessing you'll have that addressed, and the professionals will have to maybe bring a professional into the room and address that during site plan approval. But my question and what I would point to in my simple mind would be, what about all these solar panels that are going over all these homes that we're seeing all over the place, and they're having their kids live there, and their air conditioning units next to the solar panels, and they're breathing that air in? There must have been some correction in what's going on there, unless we're... Again, have the professionals address it during the site plan approval. By all means, I'm saying I can't address that. So,
certainly.
Traffic. Well, my understanding is when a solar facility is built, there is very little traffic generated by the solar facility itself. There will be for construction period, but there would be for any industry or a home builder building. There'll be builders and carpenters going in to build homes if you're building a new home development, and then there'll be organic traffic happening from that. But during the site plan approval process, even if it's solar panel, it's not a residential or industrial, you're going to have request, or they're mandated to do a traffic study, are they not? They're going to do a traffic study during the site plan approval process? Just so we answer their questions.
The traffic generated from this use is insignificant. If you go look at the property up there at 287 11 Mile Corner Road, they only have probably less than 10 people working there at any given time. Now, you will have some traffic during the construction, no doubt. There's probably several hundred jobs that are generated by the construction process of one of these facilities. During that time, absolutely, there'd be some traffic, and would have to be controlled through traffic control. But when it's all built out, there's very little traffic generated from this. In fact, there's probably more traffic generated from the residential properties on the south side of the street than there will be from the north side of the street on this property.
And I guess also the traffic generated depending on the crop by the farmer himself that's active on the property. And then last but not least, the gentleman that was talking about a wash or a levee to the south of this, which isn't part of this process, but it sounded like there was a concern that levee may cause an issue for this project. That'll be an issue handled again by whoever develops this property, if it becomes solar or if it becomes anything else. Because site plan approval has topos and drainage reports involved, and so that is not part of today's discussion, but I wanted to address with you that does get handled professionally by the city. What passes through the property has to pass through organically through the property, and that'll be handled in site plan approval. And I think you might be the gentleman that sent Matthew in my office a letter. Is that you? With some pictures or something? Yeah, okay, he's on vacation. We got it yesterday, and Matthew's back tomorrow. I saw a piece of mail, but I recognized your name on the back of the envelope, and it's on his desk, and he's back from vacation tomorrow. Any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you.
That place is going to get flooded. It's not even close to
And again, sir, here today we're just looking at the proposed use. Would the proposed use fit the parcel and the area?
And Mr. Chair and Commissioners, if I may, we'll work closely with Pinal County's flood control, because that's who we partner with. We have an actual agreement with them to handle any of the flooding issues within the city. So when we identify that, we have an agreement with the county that they actually do our flood control study and work with that. But the property owner, as we said, and the site plan will require topos and drainage to show what will happen in a 100-year event. So that'll be addressed at that time, depending on who it is, along with the type of panels, and to make sure that they don't have, those type of materials that were described. I think those were the older type that were, that had salt solutions run through them, and then they concentrated all the light on one spot. We saw that on Facebook where the bird flies through and
parabolic type.
Yeah, and those they don't use those anymore according to APS SRP. We won't see those anymore because they're not efficient. Like the photovoltaics are now the top of the line. So just wanted to add that to that.
Thank you.
Just one last thing.
Certainly.
Yeah, just because there seem to be some concerns about the environmental. I just think that it's important just to because you're reading from a piece of paper, and I guess it's important to know compliance with federal, state, and local environmental laws. Solar farm development must comply with federal and state environmental laws. Applicable federal statutes may include the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, the Endangered Species Act, and the Clean Water Act. So they're highly governed, more so today than they ever have been. So I think that there is a degree and layers of protection that can be put in place or mandated that they get those reports done and stamped by those professionals in those industries.
Very good.
And I encourage the city to have them do that.
I will say, playing devil's advocate, I've had my water tested, and I know we have about 5,000 parts per million coming out of my well. That's just from the landscape, the farmers and the runoff and everything else that we live with. Part of that's living in the desert, living in an ag area. If there's no more public discussion, I'd like to close it to the public.
I had one question, sir. So, gentleman from Pinnell Land Holdings, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. What's your mindset by not making that a perfect square and it's elongated as it is now?
Again, you can't satisfy everyone, but there's actually logic to it. So, gentleman mentioned, what about making it a square up there? Well, that's the entrance to Coolidge. Your city limits are right there, so we want to have that Highway 87 available, and Selma is Selma Highway. That's a highway. Cornman is not the highway. That's your future commercial corridor for the city's prosperity. So this is the southern portion of the city limits that then buffers Eloy, that then buffers the prison and the industrial. So it seems a very logical place for it to be, but most importantly, it is exactly contiguous to the industrial park for the ability for these manufacturers and these industrial users to have contiguous access to potentially that power, and the Eureka substation, which lies a mile and a half, just right by the prison, south of the prison, which is an APS substation. And should they need to go to Pinnell Central, that is left on the map but north as the crow flies from this end of the property. And so that's why it's long and thin, and that's your southern boundary to your city.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else? No? All right. There's no further discussion. Entertain a motion. Oh.
Margaret. Okay, so we're on ED2. We don't have SRP or APS, and the farm on 287, their power does go to California, so it's not even going to us. The PV things that you're talking about, they're different on top from what my limited knowledge is, and I've only studied this for, a week off and on in between work. They do still have those PV panels that do fry birds. The PV panels that most solar panels that are coming in right now, there's two types, the PV and the other one, but you keep talking about PV, so that must be what they're doing. They do have all those chemicals. I can read them to you. There's 4 of them. And those are in those solar panels. And they do still fry birds. So that's not even our electric company. And actually, Selma isn't the start of Coolidge. I mean, 287 is more like, Selma's like further towards us. That's not cool. I mean, it is Coolidge, but it's further out. It's west. Yeah, it's west of there. It's not, or south. Well, I don't know which direction that is, but it's further. So, and then no one's addressed property values. If we stay here for 15 or 20 years or 10 years or however long it takes to build the solar plant, then maybe we will get our money out of it. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But as soon as people start seeing that it's been zoned, that it's been okay for this conditional use, which, by the way, I looked on your zoning thing, and there isn't a thing for conditional use. I read all through your thing. It's special use, and then when you look it up, but there's not, you're using conditional. I know it's the same meaning, but it's not actually listed that way under your zoning. But it's just frustrating to me because how long, so it's okay, and they get to use their land. I get that. But can't we just make it so that I should get to use our land too? right? Shouldn't I get to enjoy my land too? Just as is their land bigger and better because they're bigger and better than us and they have more acreage? I don't know. I kind of feel like I wasted my time tonight, and I apologize. It's just not really cool. Sorry. I just want to let you know that those are the panels, and they do still fry birds. So,
Thank you.
And Mr. Vice Chair and Commissioners, that'll be addressed at the other portion when they come in for the site plan. That's where we find out the type of panels, that they're not the type that fry birds and do those type of things. And that's where it would be addressed in the site plan portion of it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll close this to the public. We'll make a motion.
I motion to approve Cool PZ 180723 and Resolution 1806 as presented with the amendments discussed. Is that the right one?
No, 180722.
Oh, sorry. I read that. I went ahead.
2-1.
Oops.
Oh, yeah.
A motion to approve Cool PZ 180721 and Resolution 1805 as presented with amendments discussed.
Cool PZ 807-22 CUP.
-22.
The resolution is 1805. She is correct.
She's just adding the resolution to it, but it's
I see it.
it's all under
Sorry.
18
It says,
Do I get a second?
I read it.
That's fine.
You did.
You're good.
I will second. I wasn't reading. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No. The ayes have it. Letter F, Cool PZ 1807-23. CUP, conditional use permit by Pinnell Land Holdings for a solar farm located between Bartlett Road, Kleck, Fast Track Road, and State Route 87 in Coolidge. Arizona parcel numbers 4012-1006B, 4012-10080, 4012-10100, 4013-001B. Chairman, we'll open it for, I'll turn it over to you.
Mr. Vice Chair, Commission members, again, this is the Vale conditional use permit application. Again, Pinnell Land Holdings, St. Holdings, for a solar farm conditional use permit. And in this case, we have the same type of conditions. The only one, we do have an additional one that we've added that addresses an existing aerial spraying entity that's there from Sarita Aerial. And so what we've done is on the end of the conditions for M is we're going to add any future solar development site plan approved for future development shall not negatively impact the safety and flight operations of the existing private airfields approximately 1,000 by 100 feet area past the existing paved runway south of the airfield's southern property line. And we negotiated that and talked to the property owner who is here and representing this company, and that was the solution we came up with between the property owner and the Sarita Aerial. Is that correct, Ms. Pugh? Yeah.
Has the FAA made a recommendation?
This is a private airfield because it's a crop dusting type operation. Been there a long time, since the 80s.
FAA regulations?
Mm-mm.
No?
No. But we recognize an existing business that services all the farms. Even when I was in farming, John Pugh was providing services to our farm that we were running for everything from, defoliation to just controlling the bugs. And I don't think pink bowworms are around anymore, are they? I think they're. See, it's how long I've been out of business. They've been eradicated, I think, by genetics. So anyway, so that's all I wanted to add in. If you have any questions, we're here to answer that. If you want to have a public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything to add? No? 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 Okay, we'll open it to the public. I'd like to open Cool PZ 1807-23 to the public. Okay, we'll close it to the public. Make a motion if there's no further discussion.
Mr. Vice Chair, I will make a motion to approve Cool PZ 18-07-23 conditional use permit.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Letter G, Cool PZ 1807-24. Another conditional use permit submitted by Pinnell Land Holdings for a solar farm located between McCartney, Tweed Road, Randolph Road, and 11 Mile Corner in Coolidge, Arizona. Arizona parcel number 4010-10030, comprising of 160 acres, more or less.
Mr. Vice Chair, Commission members, again, this is a little bit of a smaller piece of property that is on Tweedy and west of 11 Mile Corner Road. I believe the one of the gins that was relocated from Chandler is right in front of it to the east, and so this is a property that's being also looked at potentially for a smaller solar scale operation. So we will answer any questions you may have. The conditions are the same: dedication of right of way. When the actual developer works with an actual solar company, they'll come in and present your site plan, which you can look at that time. And so staff is here to answer any questions you may have, or of course developers here too. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
This one makes a lot of sense because we have a gas generating station that supplies APS about less than a mile away from this.
Commissioner Metcalf, that's correct. It's just to the west.
This one makes sense.
Any discussion? No? Okay, we'll open it to the public.
I will mention, Chairman Halby, I spoke with an Elizabeth Boyle today, and she couldn't make it, but she asked me to relay her objection. She lives near the southwest corner of this site, or at least owns the house there, and is concerned about high voltage lines next to her house decreasing the property value. And I assured her I would convey that. Side note, this property is not actually in the city limits yet, and for the permit to be valid, we would need to annex it.
So it'll be contingent upon annexation. So still be good.
Say, do we table this one till they annex it?
Well, it's...
No, we can run it concurrent. And so we're working on the annexation portion of it, but we can have this in place. It'll just be, we've done this before where we have it ready. And then once the annexation is complete, then it's fully effective. But it's not in effect until the annexation is complete.
Completion of the annexation is noted as one of the conditions in the resolution.
Right, very good.
Again, we're trying to be proactive, as fast as possible, be ready. That's why we're doing it this way.
Anyone like to speak? No? I'll entertain a motion.
Chairman Vice Chair Halby, I move that Cool PZ 1807-23 CUP be approved pending annexation.
Fine.
Be 24, correct? 24.
Oh, 24. Yes.
24?
The page says 23. That says 23.
Yeah, this one.
I apologize. It should be 24.
I think
Okay,
you're looking at the wrong
24.
case.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is what they're.
I get a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. All right. We have any reports, Gilbert?
Mr. Vice Chair, Hobby, and Commission members, at this point, really, we don't have anything besides what you already know, that we're working diligently on getting some industrial development south of town. We've been working and responding to those PIFs, as we talked about earlier, so we're really excited about some of the potential manufacturing businesses that may come into the city, so we continue to keep working on it. When we can, we will inform you of our progress. But at this point, we just want to say thank you for being here. I know these are a lot of discussion on these, so please reach out to us if you'd like to, if you have any questions about process or whatever in our office, and we will answer all your questions. So thanks again for being here. We appreciate all your hard work.
Very good. All right. Call to public. So in keeping with our commission's policy, we hope you can express your ideas in 5 minutes or less. If you'd like to come to the podium. No? We'll move to adjourn.
Vice Chair Halby, I move that we adjourn.
Very good.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you.